Okay, so I've got Photoshop open just so I can give you some simple examples showing you how to work with the pattern tool in Photoshop, which is a really good way of creating a repeating texture. And so I'm going to just open up the file that I've made. Well, I've got a few actually. So I've got some files here that I've made that I'm going to use for my tile pattern. So I might start with one of these that actually is from a real tile. So if you've made something like that, which shows everything that you want in your tile pattern, it's really simple to make that into a Photoshop pattern. Just with that file open, go to the Edit menu and then Define Pattern. So I'm going to give that a better name. So we'll call that Diamond Tile. Okay, so before I go and make my new file, I'm just going to go to the Image menu and check the image size. So I know what I'm working with, and I can see there 655 by 531 pixels. And you'll see in a moment why that's relevant. So I'm going to go and make a new file now, just under the File menu. There we go. And I'll make it A3. Well, have you been given a page size for your work? No. Okay. So, yeah. So I'll go for a large page, A3, and I'm going to leave that at 300 dpi, and then just click Create. Oh yes, of course, yeah. Now I forgot to make that landscape, but that's okay. I'll just go to the Image menu and then Image Rotation and rotate it 9 degrees clockwise, so it's landscape. And then I'm going to go back to the Image menu and then look at image size, just so that you can see the pixel dimensions. So remember before, the pixel dimensions for that tile that I made were much smaller than this. Yeah. So, okay, so let's remember that dimension there. So it's just under 5,000 by 3,500 pixels. So if I then, I'm going to select part of this. So I could select the whole thing, but instead I'm going to select with the polygonal lasso, just to show you what happens if you've got a different area selected. I want to just fix that a bit, so I'm just going to hold down Shift and add a bit more to that selection. So hopefully you've all used the polygonal lasso before, but if you haven't, it's probably one of the most important selection tools in Photoshop. So I've got a selection. Now I'm simply going to go to the Edit menu and then Fill. And then under Contents, I'm going to choose Pattern. And then in the list there, you can see there is my diamond pattern. Okay, done. That's how you make patterns in Photoshop. So if you're wondering already, how did I get the size, or how does it know what size to make it? That again is from the pixels. So I'm looking at again just that measurement or the pixel dimensions under image size. So notice again 655 by 531. So coming across here, that would be that area of pixels. So what do you think you might want to do if you want this to be smaller? How would you make a pattern with a smaller tile, do you think, if it's all from the pixels? Right, so it's coming. It's getting the size from the pixel dimensions, and that's when you're working with Photoshop the way you need to be thinking. So, so if you're not thinking in pixels, then you need to start doing that and realise why this image size option under image is so important. So you'll find most people who work with Photoshop all the time will look at that constantly, especially when they first start a new file, and again when they make any adjustments. So again, under image, and then image size again. So you can see there the size 22 or 23 centimetres. So I'm going to change that to 10. Exactly. I'm changing the size, and notice I've left resample on because I want the total number of pixels to go down. So now here, instead of roughly 600, it's gone down to 200 and something pixels. Pixels. You've got to work in pixels with Photoshop. That's the key to it. So it's not the measurement in centimetres. Yeah, but again, you've got to tie it all back to the pixels. So you set the page size first, and then you'll have a resolution on that page. So here it's 72, which is a screen resolution. The print resolution will be 300. So that should be your starting point when you make a file. I'll show you that in a moment. So here I've just reduced the total number of pixels, even though it's 72 dpi. That's irrelevant. It's again the total size in pixels up here, not even the centimetres here, even though I've used that to change the size. So again, now under Edit, I'll do Define Pattern again, and we'll say Diamond Tile Small is the new name. And so now, again, back into my new file, I've still got the selection, so again, I'll go to Edit, and then Paste, and then Fill, and then again, I've got it on Pattern already, but I'll just change that to the new tile. And now I've got a smaller pattern. Yep. That's right. Yeah, yeah. So it's easy if they're flat, that's no problem. When they're in perspective, then you've got to do a bit more because you have to adjust it afterwards. And where it gets really difficult is when you've got a surface like this one here, which is receding into the distance. Because it's not going to just change, the lines of convergence obviously are going to make it go into perspective, but then also as the vertical lines are receding, they need to get closer together. And that can be quite a difficult thing to achieve. Yeah, that's right. Use perspective warp. That's what perspective warp is for. A lot of people don't understand that talk, but that's exactly what it's for. So with that, you can make surfaces. You define a rectangle essentially, and as a plane, and then when you stretch it down in perspective, it does the receding distance, which is exactly what you want. But it only really works properly if you do it surface by surface. So you do this wall as one surface, and that would work. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you do a flat area, and then define that with perspective warp, that flat rectangle, and then stretch it down. That's right. Yeah, and then the other one, like you're saying, is a separate surface. That's right, and then it works. Where people really struggle with perspective warp, though, when they try to do things that are just too complicated, and it's not really meant for that. And also, unless you want to make smart objects, which is getting into something else. Yeah, start with the flat ones, and then have a go at doing maybe just one or two extra surfaces. Oh, good. Yeah, they do work well when you set them up properly. But if you just turn something into a smart object without setting it up, it usually doesn't work. Anyway, so perspective warp can work pretty well, but if you're doing a lot of that work, sometimes I think, well, why wouldn't you just do that in 3D? And it'll do it all for you. And usually will look better too. So I will just show you very quickly though, maybe the perspective warp tool in here. So I'm going to get another area. I'll just do a rectangle up here, rectangular selection, and then I'll fill that with my pattern, and then with the perspective warp tool, essentially, oops, there we go. So I'm just defining that area. There we go. So with with that perspective warp tool. So, oops, sorry, I just did it too quickly. Just cancelled out of it. So there we are. So just with this, and then you can, no, sorry, didn't pick it up. So is that on the right layer? So I'm just going to make a new layer. I should have done that before. And I will fill it first with the pattern, and I'll turn that one off. Okay, so that should define it, and I always forget though the first step. No, that's not doing it. No, that didn't work. Why isn't it doing it? So let's just try that again. was just doing this not long ago. I'm doing something really wrong though. Yeah, so what am I doing wrong here? So this perspective warp, that's going to pick up the thing underneath, isn't it? Perspective warp. That should pick it up. Yeah. And then, I don't know why it's not stretching. What am I doing wrong?
Control something?
Yeah, that's right. There is some option key.
Control G, the control. I can't remember. What is it? Because you do it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And then in the end, you forget how.
Yeah. Just trying to remember. Yeah, it's on the right layer. So that pins. Yeah, that's right. And that should stretch. Don't know why. Okay, so let's just ask Mr. Google. It is just that option at the beginning. Oh, you've got to switch to warp mode. Okay, so, right, so yeah, that's what I thought, and then it just wasn't coming up. But now, now it is. Okay, there we are. That's it. So it's that warp mode. So I thought it was greyed out. Sorry, that was just being stupid. So, okay, so again, when you go to perspective warp, then you get so you first have to define that area that you want to work with. Then you switch to, don't click the tick, you switch to warp up here, and then you can adjust it. Oops, it was working a second ago. It's just frozen. Okay, now it's frozen. It will come back in a second. But basically that's the key to it. So you do the layout first, that's the rectangle, and you can do more than one actually, but and it has frozen. So that's perfect timing. Switch over to Max. Okay, so that's just frozen now. It's a shame. Let's just see if it comes back. No. Yeah, but look, it's still much better than it used to be. Computers are so much better now in many ways, but sure, yeah. Oh, here we go. Now it's woken up. Okay, so now it's working. Okay, so third time lucky. Edit, perspective warp, define the area, and then switch to warp mode, and I'm getting it frozen again. Don't know why it worked the first time, and now it's just being difficult. Try and wake it up. So frustrating. I do have a few programs open, but it should cope with this. It's not doing a lot. But it's frozen. Okay, I'm just going to crash it. Okay, so we'll open Photoshop again. It's normally not that difficult. Okay, so maybe I'll actually open the one I was going to show you. And so then with I'll define the rectangle here, so I'm going to make a new layer for that. And then I'll just do a rectangular selection. And maybe, so just move it up. And that should be about right. Maybe I'll just, oops. No, I can't stretch it, but that's okay. So I'll just fill that, and hopefully my patterns got saved. No, they didn't. Okay, so the patterns should be saved automatically. Because it crashed, it didn't save them, but that's okay. I've got the file, and that's actually the best way to store and move patterns. If you keep the file that you're using to make them, because it'll only make it on the computer you're on. You can find the pat file and move it, but it's usually easier just to make it again on a different computer. Okay, so now again, I'll go and fill that with a pattern. Set the pattern I've just made. And, well, this is a good example actually, because here you can see, yeah, that's right, I've used the same image, but against this one, so when we've got to think in pixels, this image doesn't have as many pixels. So if I go to image size, you can see, don't worry too much about the measurement here, 24 by 13, because that's at 150 dpi. So here it's only 1400 by 700 pixels. So if we then think, well, this area, if that's about a third going from the top to the bottom, right? So again, looking at the image size, the height is 700 pixels. So let's say 750, because that's easy to divide by 3. So 750 divided by 3 is 250 pixels. So the area in pixels, the height area that I've got to work with is about 250 pixels. So going back now, if I want, well, how many times I might want this pattern to repeat, let's say 10 times over that area, this area of tiles. So 10 times over 250 pixels, or in other words, it'll be a tenth of 250 pixels, so 25 pixels high. So I'm going to, again, go back and define, also go to first, image, and then image size. Now, if I set this to be 25 pixels high, it's going to be very pixely, or pixelated. So I'm going to make it bigger than that. I'm going to make it, I'm going to try about 50 at least, or maybe even 100. I'll make it 100 pixels high. So that'll be a fifth, roughly, of this area, of that height there, 531. So a fifth of this, or we can just change it to pixels here if you don't want to do the maths, and then I'll make that 100. Yep, that's it. So we can still see the tiles. It's obviously more pixelated because it's got less pixels. So that's natural and normal. So again, now I'll go back and define pattern again, and this will be diamond tile small. So then I'll actually make that rectangle area a little bit bigger. So I want to stretch that or scale it down in here. So that should do. So then I'll go again to edit and then fill, and this time change to the new tile pattern that I've made. Click OK, and now we've got smaller tiles. So again, it's just getting used to working in pixels. And so then back to edit, and then perspective warp. And then I'll make a, again, selection around that area. And then switch to warp mode, and it's doing it again. What am I doing wrong there? Oh no, now it's working. It's just, yeah, it's just, no, yeah, I already made a new layer over here, so that's, yeah. Okay, so to make it easier to see what's happening, I'm just going to adjust the opacity of this layer so that I can see through the tiles. And then I can adjust these edges. It is, I think it's the graphics card struggling, so it does use a lot of hardware to do this, but there we are, now it's woken up again. So I'm going to get that area coming up from here maybe. Let's start up there. And we'll mask out a lot of the rest of it afterwards. So I'm making it bigger than than just that bit of wall. So I can cut away the parts outside of it afterwards. So notice how the tiles in the foreground are bigger than the tiles in the background. That's the key to it. If you just use the regular perspective option under transform here, it doesn't do that. That's really the difference. So here again, I'm just trying to get the angles of the wall, the bottom and the top. So it's a bit hard to see still, so I'll make it more or less opaque, more transparent. And then I've just got to use a bit of judgment there to try and get the angle for the top there. But luckily with this tile pattern, I'll get away with a bit with things being a bit off. So I might just bring that back a bit. There we are. So that should work fairly well. So I can bring the opacity back up now, and not all the way, but yep. I'll do that afterwards. Yeah. So the first thing would be to get the perspective right, and then mask it away afterwards. So I'm just going to finish that, and then now to cut it away. Firstly, I'm going to just deselect everything. Under select, use deselect or Control D, and then I'm going to apply a layer mask. So on the layer menu, you've got that option there, layer mask, and then just reveal all. So if you haven't used layer masks, it's a great way of cutting things away. You can do it there too. Yeah, you've got a button in there for it. Yeah, you get the same thing, exactly, yeah. So, so here you can see I've got a new thumbnail next to my layer thumbnail. And then I'm going to switch to the paint tool. And then check my brush. So I want a really hard brush here because I want a hard edge. And the size, I'm going to make that bigger. I can make it nice and big to start with. And then I can just paint away the things I don't want. Now, it automatically switches to black and white for the foreground and background. Don't worry if you have other colours, because when you change back to a different layer, it'll go back, it'll revert to the colours you had before. But when you go to your layer mask, it'll switch to black and white, and that's what you want. So there, I've just done a very rough cutout. I'm just going to do that all around. So here you can see I've messed up there, but that's fine. I'm going to fix that in a second. So just cutting away around the edge really quickly, not spending too long on it. And again, I might just take the opacity down just so I can see a bit more clearly. And then, again, just painting away the edges. And I'll come back and refine this, and you'll probably see then why layer masks are better than what you might be thinking of, which is just deleting. So if you clear or erase things in Photoshop, it'll obviously do something very similar to what I'm doing now. The problem is, if you delete it, you can't bring it back. Okay, so here you can see again, I've obviously deleted things here. So I'm trying to show you that I'll just change to a smaller brush. Okay, so here, I've taken out an area where I do want the tiles. But because I've used a layer mask to do that, that's right, I can switch here painting in black. So I'm going to click the button there to switch it to white, bring the background colour in. And then now, I might even just switch to a smaller brush as well. And I can paint it back in. So again, going to a really small brush, and I can get those pixels in the corner there, make it as accurate as I want. So I've gone a bit too far there, no problem, switch back to black, and there we are. That's it. So you could spend more time on it than I have and make it even neater, but I'll just remind you, when you're doing a lot of work with the paintbrush, it's good to remember the shortcuts, the square brackets on your keyboard. Make the brush bigger and smaller so you don't have to keep right-clicking. And the shortcut to switch between foreground and background is X on the keyboard. So here I'm just going to use X to switch now between black and white, and you'll do that constantly when you're painting like this. So then I can go along, zoomed in, and just fix all the edges up. And there, again, just paint a bit more of the tiles back in. Now I want to get the doors. So again, X to switch back to white, and I can clean that right up really neatly. X, that's right. Yep, That's right, X on the keyboard, yeah, that's it. And you'll see black and white. So I'm constantly going to be switching between black and white while I'm painting this way. And yep, that's how I do all of my masking. So for photo montages, I don't use any other method than this. And I don't know any pro who does do it a different way. Lots of the people who do it as students do it the way I mentioned before, just erasing things, and then take a lot longer. And then if they've got a problem, obviously it's much harder to adjust it. So you can see there, that's matched fairly well. The lighting still needs to be adjusted. So you can use the lighting tools for that as well. So if any of you had a look at the lighting options that you have, even just with the filters, let alone all the 3D things, but just using filters, you've got some options there for lighting, which could be worth looking at. There's lots of ways, so using gradients as well, you can blend that in more with the image. But I might leave it at that, because that's probably where you should start, just trying to get the patterns in perspective if you're going to use Photoshop to overlay things. And just before I finish off there though, I'm going to put the opacity back now. So that was very transparent, but when it's maybe full opacity is not the best, but with a little bit of transparency, it actually does blend in already with that surface, which is probably a good idea. And and so then also don't forget your adjustments. So you can of course use the brightness contrast, but levels is what I'm going to look at here. And so there you might find that you can get this to come, well, this one, it's got a very limited...
You're on the mask.
Oh, I'm on the mask, yeah, okay, yeah, it's good, well spotted, so yeah. So that's better, there we are. So now you can see there we are, so that can emphasise the light or dark, essentially, and just basically concentrates the colour range into that area where it does have the colour information. That can just help to emphasise things. And then here as well, adjusting the middle, sometimes that'll do good things. Probably don't use the output levels too much, but sometimes it's worth looking at. No, not in this case.
You can also, on the layer, you can use the blend tool.
Oh, yeah, what? So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well sometimes the multiply basically makes it darker or lighter though. So if you've got colour information, it'll lose it.
And overlay as well. So there are a couple
Yeah.
of options, but in a
Yeah.
scenario, have some different options.
Yeah, but if they're doing tiles, they want the colours, I'd say. Yeah. But definitely, it's worth trying the blends. Often they'll do good things, but yeah, if you want the colours, you probably need it on normal.
And one other thing you can make it more realistic on that is you learn to provide. See how
Oh, the shadows, yeah.
How on the right hand side of the tile, concretely sort of looks like it goes under the behind. I think it's a bit darker, the concrete.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's it. So that's where, so another layer on top. Exactly, or even just paint. So yeah, so actually, so that'd be another layer. Yeah. So definitely want another layer on top, and then yeah.
Because this is kind of that tile is going under the so it's making it a bit dark.
Yeah.
But you need to understand where the light is coming from and so on.
Yeah. So there though, a really good trick is if you use select pixels, and so I'll do that on the mask. No, I don't want to do that, sorry. So actually if we merge it down, no, I won't do that actually. Yeah, no, I'll just paint, but yeah, you can, once you've finished with the mask, then you can select pixels, but actually here, I'll just be careful when I paint. So again, with the new layer there, yeah, you can use burn, but burn relies on you having colours already there, or some of it already painted. But with a new blank layer, then you can just paint, usually just with black, with a soft brush. So I'll bring this hardness right down, and then get the size a little bit more maybe, and then essentially you can just paint fairly roughly. So you can see that I've just painted without being too careful, but I might even zoom in, and so actually I might even do a very rough selection. Normally you'd have this already done from your mask, but if I use polygonal lasso, I can just quickly select those areas, because it is better to paint with a selection. So that's the area of my wall, and then if I paint now, again fairly roughly, so that's where the corner is. You can see there it's only painting in the selection, and then, well, I'll just leave it on that one. So then that's where you can use multiply. So that works really well. So with multiply there, then you can adjust either the fill or the opacity, but here I'll just adjust the opacity to bring that down. So that way you can make it a more subtle shadow. And so the difference there between that and just the normal mode is that multiply uses the colour values of this layer to bring through what's behind. So it's making the tile pattern lighter or darker. It's not just applying black over the top. So like I was saying, you can use the burn tool, but if you've got the burn tool, you do that to the tile layer. But with a layer over the top, just paint, and it works really well. So, so again, maybe just as a very last thing, just so it's clear, I'm just going to deselect everything. Just keeps going back to my selection tool. There we are. So that's obviously when things are in perspective. When they're flat, it should be much easier. So if you've got an area like this, so I'm just using shift with the polygonal lasso tool to make it go in straight lines. And then, again, I'll probably make another layer. And so again, with the fill tool now, can just use the same tile pattern. And then, well, I'd probably make that smaller. So again, back to here, image size, and we'll try 70 pixels, or maybe 60 actually. So again, define a new pattern. And then again, fill that with the new pattern. And so then, to get the person back, this is an example, again, you can use the layer mask there, but here you can see I don't have to use that perspective warp tool because it's flat. So I can do the same things with opacity to get some of the layer from the background to come through as well, which will make it similar to the other layer. And then again, just to show you more with the layer masks, so again, use the paint tool. Now I can paint back in person. And again, there, normally you want a hard brush to get the edges. Spend more time on it than that, but that's probably good enough for now. So, and again, you could use, well, see again, with the opacity, you're going to get some of the background layer coming through and giving you the the shadows on a wall like that. But again, you can take it further with a blend layer. So this one can go below, and then another layer now can go above this one for the blends. So again, with the paint tool now, just painting in black. Now that brush is too hard, so I might just redo that with a softer brush. Still a bit too hard. And a bit of roughness doesn't hurt actually, so if it's a bit off, that's actually a good thing sometimes. So then up the top, I'm going to paint in white. We've got a light coming through there. Oops, and that's not white, that's cyan. Okay, so you could make that neater, but just to give you the basic idea, now I'm going to change that to multiply. And again, adjust the opacity. The other good one is burn sometimes, but it's not doing a lot here because that image is fairly bright already. But yeah, you can try it. Often you just want to go through with the down arrow, and you can see there I'm flicking through them, and you can see the difference. So that one's actually pretty good. Overlay there, of course, is a good one. So with overlay, it's getting more of the light in at the top. And so there we are. So you can see there the shadows from the bottom and then the light from above. So there, and so that way you should be able to match most perspectives that way. But if it's more complicated geometry than that, then it can be worth looking at doing it in 3D. And so I'll show you later how to match photos in a program like 3ds Max. And so you can match perspectives and other photos, or other, photos and other things in perspective. But again, if you've got fairly simple surfaces, sometimes it's easier, and definitely less work for you generally if you do that in Photoshop.